Let's say you find this painting in an old shed in your backyard. Let's say you do some research and you actually find out that this painting is worth $137 million. What would you do? Now, surprisingly, your social class would have a major influence on what you would do. If you were from poverty, you'd probably sell the painting. You would buy yourself a house. You would buy your parents a house. You would buy the car that you've always wanted. You buy all the toys, bells, whistles, the new tech. If you're from middle class, you probably do the same, except you also try to pay off some debt. You try to invest some money. And if you're from the wealthy class, you won't sell the painting. It is one of a kind. You will hang it up and have it in your home. There are always hidden, unspoken rules and cues that exist in every environment. We know this, for example, in culturally speaking, if you were to go to China, it is very rude to point with your index finger. If you go to Mexico, it is expected that you would plan to arrive late to a social event. Now, in the same way, there are social rules that we tend not to be aware of. And these rules tend to act as barriers for persons transitioning from poverty to the middle class, or in the same way, an individual transitioning from the middle class to the wealthy class. Even more impeding, the social class rules that we abide by tend to prohibit us from properly working with individuals in the poverty class. The first step is to make an effort to understand the class rules so that we can deliberately find ways to work with individuals from the poverty class. As I review specific social class rules, it's imperative that we don't see this list as something to look down on, to avoid, or even something to aspire towards. I believe that we have to become compassionate enough and wise enough to see both the values of each social class and also the drawbacks, because they do exist. So let's be very strength-based and very compassionate as we look at this list. Let's first consider how the classes perceive possessions. I think this is a great opportunity to review what would happen in Opry and Oprah's case study that we read over earlier. One of the hidden rules in poverty is that extra money is shared. Middle class puts great emphasis on being self-sufficient. In poverty, the clear understanding is no one will ever get ahead. When extra money is available, it's either shared or quickly spent. There are always emergencies and there are always needs. One might as well enjoy the moment. Oprah will share the money. She has no choice. If she doesn't, the next time she's in need, she'll be left out in the cold. So in poverty, people are possessions. Relationships are key to survival. They are all you have. And the strength of this is that the sense of community extends beyond just the immediate family or even the extended family. Your next door neighbors and the individuals from your church are uncles, they are aunts, they are part of your community. And the great strength of this is even though one would live in the middle of a neighborhood that has the highest crime rates, you are protected because your community is your family. Now, for the middle class, possessions are things. Usually these are things to advance one and used for work. And for the wealthy class, possessions are one of a kind objects, legacies, and pedigrees. Now let's look at the social class rules of money. For the poverty class, money is a way for one to expand their personality. Therefore, when an individual from poverty comes into massive wealth, they will opt to buy things that accentuate who they are. The shoes that they always want, the clothing, they will buy the cars, they will invest into the entertainment. Again, the key thing is to procure and to have relationships. So you want to invest money to build relationships. Now for the middle class, they're going to be interested in Financial Peace University. The middle class is more interested in how do I get out of debt, and managing money becomes the focus of one's life. For the wealthy class, money is to be conserved or invested. Okay, let's look at food. Now, the main question you're going to hear around the table for a family in poverty is, have you had enough? Quantity is what is the most important. Now, for the middle class, the question you will hear is, was it good? Quality is going to be the main focus. And for the wealthy class, it's about presentation. It's about the environment, the culture, and the setup of the food more than just quality or quantity. Now, in considering time, time is for the poverty class is based on a present focus. Decisions are made for the moment, and they're usually based off of emotions. They're usually based off of what the crisis is in the moment. For the middle class, however, time is based on the future. Decisions are always based on future ramifications. And the most important thing about time for the wealthy class is the traditions. It's the history. Decisions will be made at times considering the tradition or the decorum of the issue. As for language, for the poverty class, language is about survival. It's about relationships. For the middle class, language is about negotiation. And for the wealthy class, language is about networking. Now, I want to take some time to really drill into the differences of language in the social classes, specifically the formal register and the casual register, and the impact of that. Now, there are 5 language registers. There's the frozen register, which is language that stays the same and doesn't change. Prayers, pledges, court systems, you usually see this type of register used. Formal is complete sentences and specific word usage. This is formal English often used in work and in schools and in public offices. Now, the consultative register is a formal register used in conversations between colleagues and peers. The casual is language used in conversations with friends. It's often full of slang, and it's used to signal belonging to a given group. The intimate register is language used between lovers. It's private language that is full of coded words only known to the 2 individuals using it. It's important to understand that every human being uses each register given the situation. Some of us use one specific register more than the other, but in order to strive in a middle-class world, one has to be able to communicate in a formal register. Formal register is the pattern that gets straight to the point. A story in this register will start in the beginning, and it goes to the end in a chronological order. The most important part of this type of story is the plot. Now, in casual register, this tends to go around and finally gets to the point. It begins with the end of the story or the part with the greatest emotional intensity, and it relies on nonverbals and audience participation. The most important part of the story is characterization. Now, in poverty class, children will hear 10 million words in the first 3 years, as opposed to the middle class where children tend to hear 30 million words in the first 3 years. Therefore, children from poverty tend to be 2 years behind their peers and not ready for school as a result. Now, as far as education, the poverty class sees value in education, but reveres it as something that's abstract and not reality, not something that they can touch. And the truth is, in a lot of poor neighborhoods, the school system is broken. There's overcrowding of classrooms. There's not enough funds to buy new material, and the teachers that are qualified to teach are usually teaching at higher class schools. So that's one of the issues. And now for the middle class, education is revered as something that is absolutely essential, essential to climbing the ladder of success, as well as essential to making money in the future. For the wealthy class, education is a necessary tradition for making and establishing or continuing connections. So lastly, the driving force for the poverty class is survival, relationship, entertainment. Now, entertainment is absolutely crucial because something is needed to numb out the pain of living in constant survival. And one of the things that we have to understand is how hard it is and how much work it is to actually live in that world where you have to constantly try to figure out how to stretch the next dollar. You have to care for people, and many times you have to care for people that are older than you and younger than you. Sometimes it's caring for your parents as well as your siblings, and it's that fight for trying to push beyond a boundary that just seems so impervious, that seems that you can't break free from it. So it is very difficult work, and entertainment is usually used to numb out the pain. For the middle class, driving forces is work and achievement, and for the wealthy class, it's about the financial, political, and the social connections. So the hope of reviewing this section is that we begin to realize that regardless of the level in which we're working with these families, we can find ways to build value into their culture, as well as build bridges to assist them in striving in a middle class world.